hit record on Zoom.
Recording in progress.
Perfect. We know we're good. All right, time being 6:31 and 48 seconds. Welcome to the Master Plan Committee for July 10th. Tonight's meeting will be held in the Municipal Building, Town Council Chambers, second floor, here at 355 East Central Street, tonight at 6:30. Note to residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public board and committee meetings in person. The meetings will also be live streamed by Franklin TV. Recordings of meetings are available on Franklin TV's Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel. And additionally, in an effort to maximize citizen engagement opportunities, citizens will be able to continue to participate remotely via phone or Zoom. The link to access tonight's meeting is on the agenda. You can click and copy the URL into your browser, or for a call-in number, the number is 1-929-205-6099, and enter meeting ID 881-8284-2534, and then press pound. The first thing on our agenda for tonight, and I'll read that. First thing on our agenda for tonight is a public hearing. Our main topic of discussion will be the draft goals that we will be putting forth into the master plan. Much of the work that's gone into these goals are an accumulation of months of hard work that have come together through both the master plan committee, subcommittee meetings, as well as a public hearing that we had back in March. So to start off, I'd just like to make sure to note a couple of things for attendance purposes. Mr. Halligan will not be able to make it tonight. He's not feeling well. And Meg Hagan also will not be able to make it due to family obligations. I haven't heard from Erin, but hopefully, and I know Jen Williams is going to be a little late as well. Okay. With that being said, Amy, I'm going to throw it over to you to get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for everybody who is attending tonight. Our main focus tonight is to go through the draft goals that each subcommittee has created, to finalize these. From here on, once they're finalized, we can move on to the objectives and the implementation phase of the master plan. A lot going on in town, but we want to keep plugging away. We want to get this going, and I think it's really important for any feedback. I believe that we would hold off any questions till after the presentation, just to get through the presentation. So just write down any questions that you might have during the presentation that you might want to ask at the end. But this mainly, our focus tonight is to get as much feedback as we can from the public, and be able to move forward and determine the goals, and then move on to the objectives and the implementation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. So just for the record, this meeting was originally scheduled for June 12th, but due to conflicts with the school committee and other issues, we had to postpone it until today. The next phase of the master plan process, after we go over these goals today, is what is referred to as the implementation portion of this process. We're basically going to take all of the goals and add in the objectives that the subcommittees have been working through diligently, and then incorporate which departments are going to ultimately be responsible for implementing these goals and objectives. That's going to be a little bit of a lengthy process. It's going to take us most of the summer to do. And just for the record, our next scheduled meeting will be July 24th, and that's to review the results of tonight's public hearing, as well as start the implementation process. Okay. With that being said, let's jump right into the presentation. All right. So the master plan, the Franklin master plan. So the master plan committee's charge, per Town of Franklin Resolution 23-07, the town council has established the master plan update committee to update the 2013 townwide master plan. The committee will be charged to review the current master plan and existing planning documents, data, and achievements, identify the key issues facing the community in the next 10 years, assist in the identification of existing conditions and conduct trends analysis, recommend goals and objectives related to the Franklin's future, develop a clear action plan for the town of Franklin, and to make a final report to the planning board within 18 months from the date of the ratification of the committee members. Now, tonight's meeting, the agenda, Amy, if you want to go to the next. Yes, slide 2, actually.
Like 2 now.
Yep. So our agenda for tonight, number 1 is overall schedule of the master plan. We're going to talk about the plan progress to date. We're going to do the draft visions and goals, and then after the presentation, we're going to open it up to the public for questions and and hopefully give you any answers, as well as get your feedback on these goals. The master plan, excuse me, the master plan process overview. Where are we now? That's the inventory and assessment report's been complete. So just for the record, Bader and Barrett, who are our consultants, which are our paid consultants who are helping us along with this process, have already completed the draft copy of the inventory and assessment report. This was actually completed last fall. Where do we want to be in 10 years is our major question. Issues and opportunity, what types of issues and opportunities will there be? What type of goals are we looking to achieve? What's our ultimate vision statement for the next 10 years? And of course, how do we get there? Which is, of course, the next phase I spoke about, the implementation plan, as well as setting our goals, policies, and actions in place. Next slide, Amy. Bader and Barrett, from Barrett, I have Jill tonight. Jill, you want to chime in and talk about your progress on what is the project schedule?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, everybody. My name is Jill Slankus from Barrett Planning Group. I'm joined here tonight with Jeff Max Tudis from Beta Group, and we make up the consultant team who is working on the master plan with Master Plan Committee and town staff. Progress to date, I know there's some slides coming up saying, what we've done so far, and this is, I know the font on this is smaller, but this is a little bit of a more detailed view of what's been done. In the inventory and assessment, we analyzed and looked at existing conditions in town. We looked at key issues and opportunities. And as we've heard so far, the Master Plan Committee has developed goals. And then throughout the summer, we'll be providing a more detailed implementation program, which comes in the form of a kind of like what looks like a table that assigns more specifics of how those actions to achieve those goals could be carried out or should be carried out. So the project is on track as anticipated from the beginning. Typically master plan projects take anywhere from 12 months to 18 months. And we are probably just past the 12-month part on this project and anticipate finishing up in the early fall. So this is the part where kind of the culmination of the work that's been done so far. So we're excited to be here tonight and to listen to the goals that we're familiar with now from the committee, but here if the public has anything that we're missing that hasn't kind of risen to the attention of the folks who've been working on this. And then just for everybody to continue to stay tuned, there'll be opportunities prior to the finalization of the plan for the public to see what's been done in more of a completeness and to also provide comment and input. So that's the quarterly working draft. The next slide is a monthly working draft. And then we can go on to the next slide. Thank you. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Jill. Much appreciated. Amy, can you let in Jen? Perfect. I'm sorry?
There's a hand up.
We'll get to questions at the end. All right.
I'm sorry to jump in, but we're not seeing the slides necessarily when the speakers are speaking on Zoom.
You see them now?
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Chris, can you get that? Okay? Yeah. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Much appreciated. Go ahead.
Can I
Sure.
one comment? Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. Just to let everybody know that these slides are posted on the town website under the master plan committee. And if you go into events, you'll see the July 10th event for tonight. And there's a presentation that you can click on and you can follow on online as well if you can't see them. But it is posted on the website as well.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Steve, for bringing that information to our attention. Much appreciated. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Plan progress to date. Where we are, well, we started off this process late in summer last year with the draft vision and mission statement, which we've completed. We have further few small details to finish on that. We established master plan committee meetings. We set up tabling events. We've had a bike tour. That was a successful bike tour. We had the master plan subcommittee several master plan subcommittee meetings. Next slide, Amy. We've successfully had a community survey reaching out to the public on their responses to various questions. Inventory and assessment report was completed by Bader and Barrett. Master plan open house event was successful in March. We've been addressing the key issues as well as the opportunities report. And now tonight, of course, we are here to present draft goals. Next slide, please. For the record, there was a mission and vision statement that was created for the master plan. It's quite lengthy. I'm not going to read the whole thing. If people would like, it is part of the draft of the master plan that's available online. People can review it, but just for the purposes of brevity, the mission and vision statement, our vision of Franklin is to be a vibrant, inclusive, and pluralistic, innovative, and sustainable community. The mission statement, which you can see full text in the handout, Franklin is an inclusive community that strives to support its citizens, land, and businesses in a sustainable, fiscally responsible manner. And for the full document, our goals overview for tonight, we're going to be speaking about economic development, housing, land use, natural, cultural, and historical resources. Next slide, please. Open space and recreation, community facilities and services, traffic, circulation, and of course, sustainability. In order to address these specific content areas, we had to put forth subcommittees for the master plan. Amy, next slide. Go back one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
So there are 5 subcommittees of the overall master plan committee. The first one is housing and economic development. Second one is the community services, facilities, and circulation. The third one is open space and recreation, natural and cultural and historic resources. That's a lengthy name. And of course, number 4, land use and zoning subcommittee. And the 5th, which is a new subcommittee that we established as part of this new process, known as the Sustainability Subcommittee. Those are the 5 main subcommittees that have been working together diligently to address the various goals, objectives, and input from the public over the past year. The core of our pillar goals are to create housing diversity, complete neighborhoods, neighborhood connectivity, a vibrant downtown, natural historic conservation and accessibility, as well as resource efficiencies. The first subcommittee I'm going to introduce tonight, I'm going to allow the chair to speak on behalf of the goals for these particular subcommittees. The first one is Housing and Economic Development Subcommittee. The members are Kenneth Elmore, he is the chair, Kobe Frangillo, and Rick Power. And I'll throw it over to Mr. Elmore to speak further.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Again, I want to reemphasize that this is based upon input, comment, and these are the goals that seem to rise to our attention, particularly based upon the community survey and the master plan open house event that was held over at Dean College. The other reports were taken into consideration as well. You'll see the 3 goals there. The first one is very large. I'm not going to read it to you, but I'll say that housing diversity being an important piece, and here's what we spoke about and will talk more about or answer questions about intermediate housing, public and transitional housing, affordable housing, market rate housing, and also age-friendly housing being the important tenets of a housing diversity in Franklin. You'll see that the second goal talks about expanding and enhancing neighborhoods. In terms of that conversation, that was about infrastructure improvement, particularly upgrading roads and street lighting, enhancing safety and sidewalks, also investing in green infrastructure, and improving connections in public transportation options. As the other aspects too of expanding and enhancing neighborhoods is also about community engagement and empowerment, fostering opportunities for residents to participate and be involved in decision-making processes through neighborhood associations, advisory boards, and community fora that would be more about engagement. And then that final goal for housing, looking at public education, about the advantages of this more diverse environment, I think speaks for itself and opens up a lot of room for creativity. On the other end of this, too, is the economic development spaces here. So if I can have that next slide. And with the economic development, you'll see those 6 goals. We pared those down from quite a few. In terms of revitalizing the downtown, in many ways, it's what you would think it would be, creating business improvement and other ways, districts and other ways that we can do this, looking at studies that have already been done and hoping to work with their recommendations. The revitalization is also about removing restrictions that sometimes hamper business development, and also rezoning in spaces that would help to stimulate economic activity. Revitalization is also about redetermining building uses, and of course looking at that big ugly thing called parking as an important piece. Also increasing walkability in hands with that. The other pieces there are, I think, also pretty self-explanatory, but there are a number of ways, particularly making investments, and that being an important part of sidewalks, wayfaring, and also considering this other aspect of it too, and that is combining residential units with commercial and retail space to offer convenience and amenities as part of mixed use, creating mixed use in neighborhoods, particularly in the downtown and near business areas as well. I think those are sort of the basic pieces there, Mr. Chair, and I'll be more than happy to answer some questions at the end.
Perfect. Thank you, Ken. Much
Thank you.
appreciated with that. Okay, moving on to the next subcommittee, which is the Community Services, Facilities, and Circulation Subcommittee. The members of this subcommittee are chaired by Kobe Frangillo. Fellow members are Ken Elmore, Aaron Gallagher, and Janelle Lang. Kobe?
Yeah. Thank you. A lot in this committee, and again, most of we've had a whole bunch of individual conversations with all the departments as it comes to community service and facility needs, including the aforementioned bike tour, where we also got to observe some of our circulation. If you're able to go to the next slide, you can start to work through. So some of the things that are we're focusing on community facilities and services as goals, certainly using everything that's discussed in the master plan as a guide to developing department budgets and prioritizing capital investments, as well as making sure that we have sufficient resources to implement some of the investments that we name. A whole bunch under maintaining, updating, expanding town infrastructure, including looking at the future school needs, which is touched upon in a later goal. Future emergency service needs are in that, as well as some of the arts and culture needs that have come up in the survey and in the public stakeholdering. Superb delivery of public services touches upon, these are very vague goals, but these are touching upon all of the services in town. Where are the gaps? And we are identifying some opportunities for either expanding or adding public services to the government. quality and effective use of town-owned properties, looking at opportunities for efficiency, for use, when our properties, which properties are overbooked and which are underbooked, and we identified some opportunities for efficiencies there. And then, as previously mentioned, everything coming out of the school department, looking at their facilities plan and how we can support both sustainably financing quality schools moving forward, as well as ensuring that they have proper facilities over the next 10 years. And then circulation. A lot of this mirrors previous goals, but the content and some of the objectives are where we're trying to be a little more aggressive. The main goal, as identified by the group, is how do we increase the walkability and bikeability of the community. That's looking at connectivity between major areas, walk and bike connectivity between major areas and connecting neighborhoods to the downtown. It's also looking at how we create more, as touched upon in the housing and economic development, how we create more mixed use where there are more amenities within walking distance of housing, or housing within walking distance of amenities. Maintaining and expanding public transportation options. We've been in touch with GATRA and the T. How do we improve and what can we expect for improvements in terms of getting into Boston via the commuter rail, and how can we move back to a more reliable public transportation and build around a public transportation so that can actually inform future housing and economic development needs. Again, improving and maintaining public roadways. This is where we are talking a lot about how we quantify and proactively plan out infrastructure management and really assess where we are, the health of today's roads, and how we get to a meaningful path, and how we don't further add to our liabilities. And finally, improving vehicle and pedestrian circulation in the downtown and neighborhood areas. This is building out a goal of a previous goal. So identifying key pockets of town where we really want to have high foot and non-vehicular traffic, but make sure that's done in a safe way where vehicles can still move smoothly. That's going to be done in our downtowns. And what really this theme that we keep coming back to is identifying other neighborhoods around town where we can think of these sort of hubs that aren't quite downtowns themselves, but will have increased volume relative to your standard subdivision.
Thank you, Kobe. Nicely done. And our third subcommittee for tonight is Open Space and Recreation, Natural and Cultural Historic Resources Subcommittee. Meg Hagan, who unfortunately couldn't make it tonight due to family obligations, is the chair of this committee. The members are also myself, Glenn Jones, Melanie Hamlin, and Rick Power. So on behalf of Megan, Mel will be speaking on behalf of the subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I hope Meg's feeling okay.
Me too.
And you have me tonight, so thank you all for listening and tuning in to us. The Natural, Cultural, and Historic Resource Group, to set our new cultural, historic, and resources goals, the subcommittee reviewed our previous master plan goals, met with members of the public through the public outreach, and additionally collaborated with town employees and committees, including Vicki Earls, head of references at the Franklin Public Library, Brika Lai Goodlander, the Town of Franklin Conservation Director, and the Conservation Commission. Next slide, please. Goal 1 is focused on not only identifying all natural resources in the town of Franklin, but prioritizing activities to protect these natural resources. In recognition of the importance of arts and culture in our community, Goal 2 focuses on increasing support for local artists and cultural organizations. Arts education for children and adults, and access to the arts and culture for all. When we look at Goal 3, we see the preservation of historic resources with a focus on not only digitizing and managing the town of Franklin's historic resources, but also prioritizing the preservation of historic resources. Additionally, this goal will encompass the creation of a local legacy tree bylaw. Goal 4 focuses on advocacy for the above goals by engaging with community members through outreach and education. The 5th goal of the Natural, Cultural, and Historic Resource Group looks at how we can achieve all of the above in a sustainable way, looking at zoning and local bylaws to support protection of our natural, cultural, and historic resources, as well as funds to make that happen. Lastly, Goal 6 advocates for implementation of the 2024 Open Space and Recreation Plan, which includes additional goals and objectives. Next slide, please. This is the Open Space and Recreation section with the goals. Our subcommittee also reviewed our previous master plan goals for open space and rec. We met with members of the public through public outreach and additional collaboration with town employees and committees, including Brika Lai Goodlander, Conservation Director, and the Conservation Commission. You will see a major theme in the Open Space and Recreation Master Plan goals is accessibility.
Right.
We talked a lot about accessibility in many facets of the word. To expand access to open spaces for the community, the goals include education about the easy identification of open spaces for the public. Accessibility also encompasses addressing the need for active and passive recreation, and for these spaces to be accessible for individuals of all abilities. Goal 3 specifically will look at planning for this accessibility at all open spaces, including creating plans for Schmidt Farm and Maple Hill, which came up as priorities throughout our public engagement process.
Right.
Take a step back, we look at Goal 2. It looks at identifying and protecting additional resources and spaces in town. This will include not only land acquisition and open space restoration plan, but also developing smart growth management plans for the town to help protect open space and natural resources. Goal 4 looks at how to reach goals 1 through 3 in sustainable ways, including processes for thoughtful and sustainable park design, shade trees, development of a tree bylaw, and maintaining our Tree City USA status. Lastly, Goal 5 looks to create plans for the required funding and resources to reach all of the open space and recreation goals, which are a lot.
Yes. Yes, there are.
So that was the report for the for that group. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mel. Much appreciated. And also, for the record, in regards to open space and recreation, the Conservation Commission, Meg Hagan and Brika Lai worked, especially Brika Lai, worked very diligently to come up with a very thorough open space and recreation report. That is basically their master plan, that our master plan will be referencing on several occasions. They did a very thorough job. The schools, I believe you went back to that, are also putting together their own master plan, that our master plan will address that as well. So, excellent. So the next, excuse me, clear my throat. The next subcommittee is Land Use and Zoning Subcommittee. The members of that subcommittee are Janelle Lang, who are the chair, Gino Carlucci, Erin Gallagher, Joe Halligan, Bruce Hunchard, and Jennifer Williams. Janelle, if you would like.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been great to be on this subcommittee, and we've been working hard, bringing our unique backgrounds and experiences into some healthy debates to talk about land use and zoning, and to bring that all together with everything we've learned in our public outreach events. And in going through the 2013 land use goals to think about what's been accomplished and what good work there still is to do. While zoning can feel a bit intangible in ways, it can really set the foundation to achieve a lot of these other goals. So this is a pretty important work that I feel that we're doing. We can go into the goals. So goal number 1 is to support development opportunities that preserve and enhance existing unprotected natural and open space resources. And while this feels like it overlaps a lot with the open space segment of the master plan, we feel that it's important to note that it encourages redevelopment of underutilized or already impervious or already developed but not thriving spaces, so that we can preserve these virgin or forested sites. The next goal is about development of diverse housing options where the property is underutilized or needs redevelopment. And this does have some overlaps with the housing segment, but it really focuses on location and scale and how to further some of the work that's already been done in initiatives such as Franklin for All. Then we have a goal to promote mixed-use development in appropriate areas. And while the town has just recently defined what mixed-use development means, we've been talking as a subcommittee how to better define mixed use and explain mixed use, not just in a legal sense, but what does it really mean in terms of what Franklin wants mixed use to be, activating street fronts and bringing complementary uses together. Goal 4 is about encouraging expansion and retention of current businesses and attraction of new businesses in appropriate locations. Economic development is looking at one facet of this, but again, we're thinking about locations and specific recommendations for specific zones, such as commercial 1 and industrial zones. And in goals 5 and 6, these are a little bit new to the master plan. These weren't really touched on in the 2013 master plan, but we feel it was important to think about Franklin in the next 10 years. To provide guidelines on Franklin character and develop a more clearly defined review process, so that this can really help us understand, and from what we've been hearing from a lot of people, what is Franklin character? How do we review the proposals that come before us? And then lastly, make the permitting process more transparent, streamlined, and in alignment with the overarching town goals. So this is clarifying the process for both residents and any interested parties that may be considering a development in Franklin, and how we can encourage those kinds of developments that we want to come to Franklin. And that will also include things like defining unclear or missing building use types that we frankly didn't have around 10 years ago, like short-term rentals or EV charging. So that outlines the goals for land use.
Thank you so much, Janelle. Great job, by the way. You had, just for the public's knowledge, the Land Use and Zoning Subcommittee, since it's such a large content area, is one of the largest subcommittees with 6 members, and they tackled quite a bit in the past year, and a lot of hard work went into that. A lot of hard work went into each subcommittee. And finally, the 5th subcommittee of our subcommittees is the Sustainability Subcommittee. The members of this are Gino Carlucci, he is the chair of that subcommittee, Melanie Hamlin, and Eric Stetzler. Gino, over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, on behalf of the Sustainability Subcommittee, we are very happy to recognize the strong sustainability thread that runs through all the other goals from the other subcommittees. And secondly, 2 things we focused on in developing our goals. One was to support all the pillar goals which were presented at the very beginning. And secondly, it was emphasized to us in the beginning to make goals that are economically feasible and achievable. So most of our goals are very much that. So first of all, decarbonize all town schools, buildings, and facilities. That seems pretty straightforward. Sometimes that may result in somewhat extra costs up front, but that gets paid back as utility costs and maintenance costs get reduced over time, so that's results in a net savings. Second, adopt and support sustainable development policies and practices. Again, that results in a reduction of costs, and to the extent that it results in more efficient development patterns, it can produce more tax revenue per land area than sprawling development patterns. Next, support, encourage sustainable practices among residents and businesses. Again, this one does not really entail any significant town expenditures, but it helps reduce costs for residents and businesses as they adopt more sustainable development practices and policies. Next, encourage and promote walkability and bicycling. You've heard that already several times throughout all the other subcommittees. It's a very important goal and one that may require some expenditures. There is a significant amount of grant money available for those things. So it's, again, something very important that we want to emphasize. Next, strengthen resiliency to climate change impacts. Again, generally requires some upfront costs, also grants available. However, it also avoids costs from the damage that increased storm and climate change impacts create. And finally, support programs to reduce waste. That's, again, kind of a no-brainer and could lead to reduced landfill and recycling costs, as well as more efficient practices. And that's it.
Thank you, Gino. Much appreciated. Hi, Jen. Welcome. Good to have you. And at this moment, we're going to break off into questions. But before we do that, I do want to say a huge thank you to my fellow members of the Master Plan Committee and everybody who took their time out of their busy schedules to meet on a fairly often basis to try to meet our objectives of getting these goals completed for tonight. A lot of hard work went into this. I just really want the public to understand that, you know, we are volunteers, just like I've been for 15 years. This takes away from a lot of our personal time, and there's a lot of work that went into making the goals and objectives where they are today. And I just want to say how much I appreciate that, how much I appreciate everyone on this committee. I know going into the summer, it can be somewhat of a challenge to kind of get the public out, like tonight's a classic example here. Unfortunately, due to conflicts that happened in June, we had to postpone it to July. But also, just to let the public know what our next steps are going to be before I go into the question portion of this, as soon as we get public input on these goals, the next portion of this process is to go what's known as the plan implementation portion. We were going to take our goals, we're going to actually refine many of the objectives, and many of these goals and objectives are ultimately going to be given to a department to whom will be responsible for those specific goals. Now, some of these goals and objectives might be short-term goals that might happen within the first 3 years. Some might be goals that might not happen until the latter end of 10 years, and some might be long-term goals that might take 10 years to accomplish. But we need to kind of sit down as our next steps and kind of figure out ultimately which department and who's going to take responsibility for that. Also, just for the record, one of the first things we did at the beginning of this process was to go through the existing 2013 and the 2020 implementation update and actually review what were existing goals and objectives and taken out anything that had already been completed, kept anything that we felt should continue on into the 2023 version, as well as add a few new goals, which were presented tonight. With that, I will, Amy, you have anything you want to throw in before?
No, I mean, I think I want to thank everyone in this committee that has come up with all these goals and all the subcommittee members. They've worked really hard on several meetings and putting all this together, as this is part of one step in getting the plan accomplished, and I appreciate all the work everyone's put in. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I will open it up to the public for any comments, questions, input you may have on any one specific area, content area, whether it be economic development, land use, zoning, recreation, sustainability, anything that you feel you have a pending question for. I'll open it up to the public at this time. Just name and address, please.
My name is Maxwell Marangello. I live at 127 Central Park Terrace. First, I want to start off with thanking all of you for your tireless work. I know it's a thankless job, all the volunteer work you put into this. I greatly appreciate it. I think hopefully, within the next 10 years, you'll get to see the fruits of your labor in a more of a vibrant downtown because of the work that you did today. So I'd like to start off, I want you to imagine a not too distant future where you're in an area with a bustling storefronts, a vibrant local economy, mixed-use development, transit-oriented housing near commuter rail, and easy access to the highway. This, in fact, is not Franklin's downtown, but a revitalized and completely reimagined Forge Park 2 miles to the west. The Master Plan Committee can lay the groundwork to make this future a reality. Forge Park should be, I think, could be reimagined. We haven't really talked about it. I think we've given a lot of our focus to downtown. I really think it should be a goal to actually take a look at, to actually lay the groundwork, because it's going to be a long-term process. You need the state to be involved. But I had some ideas for what maybe a future Forge Park could look like. And one of them is transit-oriented mixed-use development with easy access to both the commuter rail and 495, something downtown doesn't actually have. I think maybe like a more of a suburban or small townish Assembly Row like Somerville has, but like scaled down a little bit. Because it's near 495 and near the commuter rail, that's less traffic disruption to the rest of the town. Think of expanding that to the rail trail. We have that Grove Street is right near there. Is there some way we connect the commuter rail up there to the rest of the rail trail? And we also have that connection downtown as well that we're planning. The other thing, a piece of the puzzle that we haven't really talked about is private and public bus options, including maybe implementing a Logan Express bus service like Mansfield has. Also, if you want to go to Worcester or Providence, you have to take the train to Boston, then you have to take a train back. And that doesn't make any sense. There are some ways around it, but maybe we could look into working with a private bus service to Worcester, a private bus service to Providence, and partnering with those organizations. Another option is to have work with both RIPTA, the Rhode Island Public Transit Authority, and MBTA, and maybe if we connect to RIPTA, we could get more trains from Forge Park to Boston, and sort of it's a three-way deal. Rhode Island gets access to our commuter rail, and we get more increased service. And also, of course, GATRA fixed roof service to Forge Park if we have such a development there. The other thing that I don't think gets talked about is rental car options. If we're talking about taking cars off the road and we want people to drive less, people need an intermediate option where they can, if they live in Forge Park or they live downtown, they could, not have a car when they don't need it, but then rent a car when they do need it. And by having those options where, you could share a car, you sort of take more cars, you have less need for parking, but you have that option for people who maybe need a car some of the time. I really think that during the master plan process, Franklin Downtown has received a bulk of the attention. It's dear to our hearts, I know, but really we could, if we don't act now and lay the groundwork, we're going to be missing out on a great opportunity to make something even greater, or just as great. So please don't implementing a bright and bold vision for Forge Park. Thank you.
Max, could you do me a favor? Do you have that written out?
Yes.
Or can you email it to me?
I'll give you.
No, yeah.
All right.
I can share it.
Yeah, that'd be
Thank you.
great. Thanks, Max. I'd like to have that list. Okay. Anyone else in council chambers who would like to speak in regards to any specific goals that we spoke about tonight before I move it off to Zoom land? No? All right. Then I'll go to Zoom land. First up, we have Mark.
Yeah.
Just name and address,
Thank you.
please.
Yes, Mark Minichelli, 31 Longfellow Drive here in Franklin. I guess I'd like to add to Max's thanks, I'd like to add my thanks, our thanks. My wife and I are here together in this room. Our thanks to this committee for all the hard work that you've done. and also to congratulate you on the public events which you held. I think the one at the library was great. The one at Dean College was fantastic, and it was a great way to gather a lot of information, and it would seem to be a very popular event, even on a rainy Saturday morning. So thank you and congratulations. Now, I do have two suggestions and questions. I'll do the easy one first. I've mentioned at a few of the town council meetings my personal support for the town of Franklin hiring a sustainability director, and Gino, I've offered and sent a report sort of summarizing the financial payback that several area towns and municipalities have received by, in fact, adding a sustainability director or a sustainability coordinator to their town staffs. I feel pretty strongly that the net impact to a town bottom line would be positive by adding such a position, and it would obviously help achieve the sustainability goals, not only that were in the sustainability subcommittee's report, but that were woven throughout some of the other areas. So I guess my question or my request would be, would it be appropriate to add a specific goal, perhaps under the sustainability area, to actually hire a sustainability director for the town of Franklin?
Gino, you want to address that? I think that came up as one of our topics.
Yeah, one of our objectives under our goals was to support town staff in implementing sustainability issues. So that it didn't specifically identify hiring a sustainability director or coordinator, but certainly that's something that would fall under that and could be considered when we develop the actual specific implementation mechanisms for these goals and objectives.
Yeah, I guess thank you, Gino. I think my request would be maybe to make it more explicit, and because, and the reason I think it's important to get it on there is because I think the sooner we do it, the more public available funds are going to be available. I'm thinking that as time goes on, there'll be less grant money for example, to add solar or to add heat pump technologies to facilities. As that happens more and more over time, there'll probably be less and less grant money to help us to help ease the burden as we do that. So I would love to see it added as explicit goal. But the other area that I'd like to comment on tonight, both my wife and I noticed that throughout the presentation, and given the extreme public focus on public education the last several months, or the last full year, the public education goal, 10-year goal, seems to be either miniature or missing. And I it seems to me that that's such an important objective for the town, to have strong public education. And I think there's an opportunity to weave Franklin Public Schools with Dean College as well, in terms of educating the public in Franklin and the Franklin area. And I don't have a specific request as to where it should be, but I would love to see it more visible within the master plan. Any sort of comment or feedback on that?
In regards to, I'll give you just a second, Kobe. In regards to public education, you're talking more in regards to the towns taking the initiative to put together some type of informational sessions? Are there, say for instance, seminars or outreaches or that type of public education? Or
No, I guess I'm more interested in if this is our 10-year master plan for where we want to be 10 years from today.
Right.
Where we are today in terms of the quality of our public school system, I think it would be important to set a bar higher than where it is today to help us to get there. So I'm talking about not public education, about these initiatives that you've spoken to, but just our K through 12, and with Dean College, K through 12 plus college. We have some great opportunities in this town to do more in terms of educating our children and the adults who live here.
Kobe?
Yeah.
It seems to be missing. It seems to me to be missing from our strategic 10-year plan.
Yeah, I'd say it's certainly not missing. It's within the community service and facilities.
When you said, Kobe, I'm sorry, when you talked about that, it sounded more like a facilities conversation, though, than an overall capability.
Yeah, no, it incorporates both, but the conversations that we've been having are, how explicit do we want to be? The point's very well taken, and I think that's one of the things on my mind as we revisit our goals and objectives coming out of this. Are there opportunities to be more explicit in targets for school improvement, be it on the funding side or the performance side?
Thank you. I appreciate that being considered. And I think, President Elmore, or retired President Elmore, shall I say, was making, I think, great inroads in trying to sort of integrate Dean College into Franklin's overall educational picture. And I would hate to, I think there's an opportunity to continue to do that with a 10-year plan.
Yeah, another well taken point. It's partially included in our economic development committee, some of the work with Dean for workforce development, but there might be an opportunity to name it within the school section as well.
If I may add, yes, sir. Being the elephant in the room, more so to Kobe's last point there about us looking at partnerships with not just Dean College, but other institutions in Franklin, so that we can improve on some of these things that you're talking about. So I think that's there. We can expand. I can expound a little bit more on what we were thinking about, but as Kobe said, it was really about post K through 12, certainly following the lead for K through 12 with the planning that the schools have done, but to make sure that we could get more of a viable workforce educational process in place.
Okay, thank you all. As I started, I'll end. Thank you all for this.
No, thank you. And also, by the way, Mark, just for the record, we're also, as I mentioned earlier, the school department and the Franklin Public School Systems are working on their own master plan. That's part of the schools, and it's school specific, education specific, curriculum specific, including facilities and other portions of that as well. The master plan will be referencing that, just like we referenced the open space master plan. We won't have any explicit goals or objectives relative to their goals and objectives, but we will refer to their master plan on occasion throughout the master plan as a whole, just so that the public and the community understands that document it does exist, and they're working very hard and very diligently to complete that master plan for the schools.
Okay, thank you,
Mr.
Glenn.
Chair, can I
Yes.
just note one thing?
Certainly.
I am having difficulty pulling up the full language, but I do believe we mention public education in our mission statement in the full text. So I don't know, Amy, if you have that handy.
I actually don't, but I
Because I know we talked about it early, the importance
But
in the
I
next 10
think-
years.
I also think, and it, as well as your objectives include a lot of school activity within your objectives, 'cause I've seen that in Kobe's committee and land use committee and all
Right.
that. So I think you're gonna find some more defined stuff. I know tonight we're just establishing the goals, but in the objectives, that a lot of that's gonna fall under that, and I think that's where we're gonna see it. And when those come out, we'll definitely take some more public comment when those are established as well.
Correct. Thank you. All right, we have another hand up, and as the chair of the council would say, in Zoom land, Ally, how are you tonight?
Good, thank you. Allie Rayum, 47 Summer Street.
Thank you.
And as everyone else has already said, thank you so much for all of the work you're doing here. It's amazing to hear everything, and I can't even imagine everything that's going on behind the scenes with all your hard work. So thank you. And as always, I'm here to be a voice for accessibility and inclusion for the disability community. And I just have to say thank you so much, especially to Open Space and Open Space Conservation Recreation. They've just been doing a phenomenal job at accessibility and inclusion in that sense. So I want to publicly thank them. And additionally ask where accessibility stands in the other goals. It wasn't mentioned in any other subcommittee. And I would particularly be curious about housing, because there's all different types of housing options, and low income, everything like that. But how about accessible units for housing, accessible opportunities, and then as well as the subcommittee that's more like facilities and talking about downtown and making it walkable and things like that. That's great if it's walkable, but it's also not accessible. There's so many businesses downtown that they are really grandfathered in under ADA because
Right.
they're historic buildings. However, they're not accessible. And I think here in Franklin, we're really starting to do a great job at being like, okay, there's ADA, and then there's even better.
Right.
ADA is the base
Bare.
of everything, like the bare minimum. So that's my other question too, is, how are we adding accessibility into downtown, the businesses, the walkways, the paths, even the crosswalks are very difficult to see downtown with the brick instead of being stripes, and it's hard to travel on in a mobility device. I just did it the other day on my mobility scooter, and I felt like I was gonna throw up going over the bricks. So curious about accessibility.
One second, Kobe. It's definitely on our radar, and if you've probably heard, they've added new accessibility access to the MBTA down here at the commuter rail here in Forge Park, not Forge Park, but down in Dean. And that's exciting news. I mean, trust me, I understand as a person I'm not personally disabled, but for a person who's had friends and has had worked at construction, people who, like for instance, one of my apprentices broke his ankle. Many people don't think about how important accessibility is until they themselves need that type of handicap access, because they either broken an ankle, they hurt themselves, or they have a permanent injury that they can't, it's not easy for them to get around. I completely agree with you, making things more accessible, handicap accessible, especially ramps, adding housing and some facets that will be more accessible for the handicapped. These are all very important topics, and we definitely need to start to incorporate more and more of them above and beyond what the ADA compliances are. I mean, within the electrical code, state of Massachusetts, there is a whole section in the back of the code book that references just making receptacles and switches and devices in the person's home at a reasonable height, just so they're accessible and easier to get to. These are things that could be incorporated, even though I know the code specifically states if something, as you stated earlier, ma'am, something's pre-existing non-conforming, it doesn't necessarily have to be brought up to code. But in regards to your comment, I agree with you that there are opportunities, and we can reflect those within the master plan in some facets to address, say, for instance, facilities, and I'll pass it off to Kobe in a second, where we could say, okay, what could we make more handicap accessible, even though we don't necessarily have to bring it up to code? Where can we do that? Kobe?
Yeah, again, Very well taken point. Accessibility is included as an objective under circulation, but we talked as a committee about how we can make that more specific. You know, in general, we're talking, you know, looking at last year's or at the last master plan. A lot of the goals, were they finished or unfinished? Well, they were so vague that it was unclear. And so how can we be more specific? And I'd love your help. We've already collected a lot of information through the public feedback, and we have it all in this mapping tool that was available. Has been publicly available for a while, but was available at the stakeholder session. So that named some accessibility opportunities, but some of the things that we would love for you or really anyone in the accessibility community, the disability community to help us with is, where are key crossings where we can add audio to our walk signs? Where are some major trip hazards that we should be aware of? The visibility, what are crosswalks that are less visible? Where would curb cuts be helpful to be more tactile? And what other major measures would be helpful? Yeah, it's certainly key to walkability, particularly around our downtown and those neighborhood areas, and as well, looking at the facilities opportunities, and I think we can revisit about whether we've been explicit enough in naming accessibility as a goal under our facilities.
Let me also thank you for raising some really important things that we can do without the law making us do them. And especially if we go back to what our vision statement is, this is a part of inclusive and pluralistic community is an important piece to it. I will point out that, and I should have, and pardon me for not doing this, when I talked about age-friendly housing, I actually should have said age and ability-friendly housing. When we go beyond just disabilities, handicaps, and everything else, but ability-friendly housing is really important too. And that is in one of our sub goals when we talk about diversity of housing options. The other place where you'll see that too, under the housing rubric, is when we talk about expanding and enhancing neighborhoods by focusing on the investments we need to make. Infrastructure improvement is one of those aspects of it, so that it is about the accessibility to businesses, it's about the accessibility and convenience in and around housing spaces as well, and that's something I could have mentioned as well, but there is some thinking, pretty deep thinking about how we've got to, I think, go beyond disabilities and really look at accessibility in a really large format.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else comments in regards to that? Janelle?
Yeah, thank you. When it comes to pre-existing non-conforming buildings, many municipalities will track the amount of renovation costs that are going into a building, so that if you go over a certain percentage of the assessed value, you are required to bring it up to ADA and beyond. And so that's something we can talk about as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Janelle. Appreciate that. Anyone else in regards to accessibility? Yep, I'm going to go to the next person in just a second. Is this in regards to accessibility questions?
I wasn't sure. I know Maximo Marangella, 127
Yep.
Central Park Terrace. I didn't know if TIFs could be used, tax increment financing could be used to bring buildings up to code for accessibility. Is that too wonky? I know this is goals, that's more implementation, but I didn't know if that was related
To
to.
answer your question, Max, usually our tax incremental financing programs are usually put out there to businesses, both small and large, to try to offset their tax burden. And it's kind of an incentive program. It's not necessarily meant to allow companies to add accessibility or improvements to their business. It's really kind of a tool used to attract businesses to the community so that they can set roots and establish themselves. By the way, a tax incremental financing program is a company like, for instance, Hamilton Technologies set up roots here in Franklin. They were offered a TIF, which meant that their taxes for the first 5 years were incremental. They got larger, of their percentage of the taxes got larger over a 10-year period. That was an incentive for them to move here, which they did. So that's not really meant for those types of things. I'm being a little vague, but that's its point.
It can be.
Can be.
The answer is yes, it can be used as strategy. The merits of whether it should be, could be debated.
Can be. Anything else with accessibility? So I'm going to take one more person on Zoom land has their hand up, and I'll have to put my glasses on for this. Scott, sir?
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Scott Fott, 17 Lincoln Street.
Hey, Scott.
I'm kind of in and out of these. I haven't attended all of them, but I did attend the workshop over at Dean College, I guess, a couple months ago, maybe 6 months ago now.
Thank you for that.
And I guess my question is, I've been here for 15 years. I don't think downtown has significantly changed in that time. I think it was one ways, and then we ended that. But my question is, do you envision in 10 years from now, downtown being significantly different, densed up, or anything like that? Because my fear is, and I guess my thinking is, especially after talking to some folks, that there's 3 property owners downtown.
Correct.
Very hard to get to do anything, and it's going to look exactly the same in 10 years from now. And I guess, is that what we think might happen?
Kobe?
I'm very optimistic about the future of Franklin and Franklin's downtown, but it takes serious work in terms of changing the bylaws that define how buildings can develop. We've had very, very restrictive zoning. Almost all of the downtown properties wouldn't be able to be built today, and so the Housing and Economic Development Committee in particular is taking a serious look at opportunities for rezoning of our downtown, which will allow for and encourage the redevelopment of buildings in our downtown.
And
that's part of our plan, all the tools or I guess, is that incorporated in the plan, or should it be?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Ken?
If I may.
Yes.
I think that this comes down to something that's pretty important, and we keep going back to what our civic goals are. People have to really buy into a Franklin, and that they want to have these sort of things work. Well, we're talking about zoning, everything else, especially when you're talking about ownership. We're talking about innovation here. We're talking about really people coming together in very different ways to think about the next 10 years. And sure, we can do a lot of things by way of bylaws, zoning, legal sorts of aspects there. But it's still going to come down to us, residents, people being here, being very innovative about how we want to develop a space. We got to come to the table with something like what Max just mentioned and say, here is a vision, and we need to get together. We need to put our resources and our technology and our dollars into making something different happen. And that's going to be really difficult to do if people won't go with a one Franklin or a Franklin for all mentality into this space. That is not something that I've necessarily seen in any of this. These goals are really specific around things like zoning and everything else, but we really need to incorporate everything I've heard tonight says we've got to really incorporate some civic goals into this and some real community mindset goals into this for any of it to work.
Thank you, Ken. And Scott, in regards to your comment that you said earlier about the very few amount of property owners that actually incorporate most of the downtown, in the 15 some odd years that I've been sitting in the seat as a counselor, and myself, the former chair of economic development, one of the biggest challenges that we've had, even though we had the HPP program, we had the PWED program, which improved the area that was the area behind Dean's Bank, as well as making the traffic, two-way, improving the streetscapes, adding benches, taking out telephone poles, making improvements to the downtown in hopes that it sparks the help of the property owners. But that's kind of one of the things that we are, I hate to use the word handcuffed, but it's one of the things that kind of ties our hands when it comes to making improvements to the downtown, is having the property owners in kind of in league with us, in cooperation with us, in trying to meet many of those goals. And that's been a particularly difficult challenge over the years. I mean, we all always have such great ideas on what the downtown should be, but we also have to respect the fact that these are private property owners. The town of Franklin can only go so far. We can only go up to the curb and up to the property line of the property, but from there on, it's the private property owners who have to be able to work with us to try to meet some of our future goals, and it's always been a challenge. And moving forward, the next 10 years, I honestly think there's going to be some changes in the wind. That's me being optimistic, where many of the changes that we make from the master plan, as well as from the town council, working with the property owners and the businesses downtown, that we're going to see more improvement. And because sir, just like you, I live 2 blocks from the downtown. It's always been my hope to see the downtown Franklin be more than it is. It's particularly difficult to keep and maintain large businesses downtown simply because we have 2 very profitable marketing places on either side of town, from Franklin Village Plaza to Shaw's Plaza and so forth. Many of those businesses move to the outskirts of the town. But there's no reason why we can't make such improvements downtown. I agree with you. Yes, sir. Ken?
I think that land use has a really wonderful goal that I think it might be the most important goal here, and I hope that you'll take a look at that and really think about some ideas here, and it is to provide guidelines on Franklin's character. I think that's a really significant goal, and they are fleshing that out, but I think that's the crux of what we're talking about right now.
Anything else, Scott?
No, I would just concur, and I guess here's where I don't have enough knowledge, but I thought cities and towns do have some ability to force some things, and I'm trying to think with blight. At least I thought I've heard stories over the course of years where
Yes.
Towns have not waited and been more proactive in some way.
Well, the city of Worcester, sir, just to answer your question in regards to blight properties, there is I forget the name off the top of my head. Maybe one of my fellow members can help me. Is it urban revitalization? It is a economic development tool that the state offers that will allow the town, but you have to actually establish an urban development committee with specific goals and objectives and specific locations that would be targeted that may fall under what they consider to be blight. Like, for instance, in Worcester, I know there were several buildings, properties that were run down basically to the point where they were a safety hazard. People were breaking into them. They weren't bringing any economic health to the community, so therefore they stepped in the former the town manager, he put that into place and was able to develop those portions of Worcester, and it's made significant improvements ever since. We don't currently have such a plan in the town. It's been talked about, and it's something that we'd have to look at from the council's perspective. Probably throw that over to the economic development chair for discussion. Who's Melanie Hamblin?
Take a note, Scott.
Did you want to talk about that?
No, I would just
Go ahead,
say no tools should be off limits or not considered. Like, we should consider all the tools in our toolkit. But I think that we have a whole bunch more levers that we can pull before urban redevelopment. I'm less interested in saying that the downtown property owners are handcuffing us as I am. I think we're handcuffing downtown property owners and have opportunities to make it easier for them to redevelop in the alongside our vision.
Fair enough. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I don't see any more hands on Zoom. So with no further questions or comments from the public, that pretty much brings our agenda to an end. And I think, Bruce, that was actually your area of expertise.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. We have a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.